proves what we've been saying all along. HMRC have given us a new tool to play with. By our calculations, a hairdressing and beauty business turning over 450,000 versus another type of high street retail might be contributing nearly £40,000 more in additional VAT. And that's just because of the way our tax system works. This might not be the sexiest of subjects, but it's a really, really important one for us all to understand. We're going through different high street businesses. In video 2, we'll be going through different types of hairdressing business models. And in video 3, we'll be putting to government ideas we think for changing the system to help our industry thrive and survive. Video 1, part 1. Why is VAT so punishing for the hairdressing and beauty industry and therefore, in our opinion, not fit for purpose? This is the tool we're talking about. The government have come up with a new HMRC tool. Google search that and you can find the tool. So let's compare two high street businesses, and the percentages could be slightly different for different opportunities. But here what we're doing is showing a like for like comparison that is possible on the high street. Typical high street business selling retail goods, and these are the non-vatable items that we're looking at here. Now, 11% salaries, a typical amount. 10% rent, which we're going to show is the same in the hairdressing business too. 2% rates, 10% other fixed costs that aren't VAT charged, and that totals 33%. So 23% of non-vatable items and 10% rent make that up. The VAT charged items here are 60% cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold would be the items that the retail company buys in to then sell on. And around 7% utilities. And these could be typical figures. That totals 67%. Now let's look at the hairdressing or beauty business. The differences, as we said, are in salaries and cost of goods sold. So non-vatable items, salaries could be around the 60% mark. Rent, rates, fixed costs are all the same, and a total of 82%. So 72% non-VAT items and 10% rent. VAT charged items, on the other hand, 11% cost of goods sold, and that's for the colour, for the styling products and shampoos and so on that we use in the salons. And again, 7% utilities at that lower rate gives us a total of 18%. And then we're going to put those into the tool and show you what comes out. So here we go. These are the numbers we're putting in for the typical high street retail business. We're using the maximum turnover you can have before VAT. 89,999 is our gross turnover. 89,999 gross costs. And then we've got the non-VAT items and the VAT charged items that we've gone through there for you. So are we established in the UK? Yes. How many months income? We're going to go for 12. And the approximate income we've already looked at. So the income here, 89,999, we're going to put into there. And we're going to continue from there. Is any business outside the scope? Well, it's not. So we'd say no there. Any of our income exempted? No. And we're applying a standard rate of VAT for standard retail items and for hairdressing services and so on. It's the standard rate. So we're going to tick the standard rate, and then we can see here that those answers come up. Going to continue through that. Approximate business costs. Now we've said those business costs are 89,999. So we're just putting in 89,999 and we're showing those costs across the board. So this is a zero profit, but most of the profit would come out. We're doing a like for like comparison. So we continue from there, and then we look at our gross costs. And because we're doing a like-for-like comparison, we're going to make them a zero profit business. So 89,999 in the costs. Put that in. What percentage of those costs are outside the scope of VAT? Now, the non-VAT items we've already gone through, 33% in total. But the next question is about rent. So we need to put 10% in for that. So we're going to put 23% in here. Approximately what are exempt from VAT: buying, leasing, renting, commercial land and buildings. Yep, let's put that in at 10% of our costs. And what percentage of these costs have a zero rate of VAT? Well, there's none of those in there for our businesses. And lastly, second to lastly, utilities, electricity, 7% we've put in. And then it says, does approximately 60% of your costs have a standard rate? And we're going to say yes to that because that's the 60% cost of goods sold that this product, this business has. So 60% they are charged VAT on. So yes. Continue. How would you want to account for VAT within your selling prices? Well, typically in hairdressing and most small businesses, actually people just absorb the VAT in when they cross the threshold. We don't add 20% to our prices because we know we'd be uncompetitive. So absorb all of the VAT into your current price. And then we get the answers 23%, 10%, 0, 7. Yes, we're saying it's 60% and we're absorbing all those costs. So what additional VAT would this business pay is the answer to this. So what it means to register for VAT. So the non-registered business would be 0% worse off or have a £0 profit. Profit after VAT per quarter for a VAT registered business of this size would be 1,424 less. So they would be 1,424 less per quarter worse off. So what we've got here is the hairdressing and beauty business, and it's exactly the same as we said, except for salaries and cost of goods sold. So what we're going to do is change those percentages in here. I'm just going to roll this back to the initial percentage ask. So approximately what percentage of these costs are outside the scope of VAT? And for us, that's the salaries, rates, and fixed costs at 72%. So we're going to change that to 72. Continue that. We've still got the 10% rent, so that comes to our total of 82. And then we've got 0, which we said before. Still got 7% costs for utilities, and then it's going to say does approximately 11%. That is correct. 11% of COGS for our colour, shampoo, conditioner, whatever else we're going to be using. And we're going to absorb all those costs as we did before. Gives us the answers 72, 10, 7 and 11%. Continue. So go through that. What does registering for VAT mean for a hairdressing business as they go over the threshold? Well, if you're not VAT registered, you're £0 worse off. If you are VAT registered, in this case, you're £3,262 per quarter worse off. Now let us show you as we go through what that means for businesses of a larger size. Right, so we're going to take you through the rest of the presentation. So let's look at these two high street businesses. The typical high street business retail selling goods, as we've looked at before, as we've shown, would be £1,424 worse off every quarter when VAT registered. That's £5,696 worse off per year on the turnover of £89,999 if they decided to VAT register. Now, hairdressing or beauty, £3,262 worse off every quarter when VAT registered. Now that's £3,048 worse off per year on a turnover of £8,999. Quite simply shows just how much more challenging it is to become VAT registered in hairdressing and beauty. So let's show the effect of that on these two businesses. The typical high street business selling goods contributes $5,700 additional for every 90,000 turned over, and the hairdressing and beauty business contributes $13,000 in additional VAT for every 90,000 turned over, and that's additional on top of the goods it was buying in before. That's $7,300 extra in contribution per 90,000 because we run a different business type. It shows why it's so challenging to move across to the next threshold. If we scale that up to a business with a gross turnover through the tills of, say, 450,000, then the problem becomes much more stark. The retail business, overall 5 times bigger, would contribute 28,500 in additional VAT on that turnover. And that's 6% of its gross turnover would be contributed in additional VAT. But the hairdressing business will contribute an additional 65,000 in VAT over and above the goods that it was buying in. That's 14.5% of its turnover would be contributed in additional VAT. But that's not where the tax imbalance stops. If we go back to the original percentages of the two business, 60% labour costs and 11% labour costs, you can see that hairdressing and beauty has 5.5 times the labour costs of that other business. That means that the taxes we and our team contribute to the public purse through labour taxes are 5.5 times greater for every pound spent in our salons and spas than through the other traditional retail model comparison we've put side by side. 5.5 times more employers' national insurance, 5.5 times more employee taxes and national insurance, and 5.5 times more pension contributions. In summary, VAT registered hair and beauty salons contribute 35 to 40p in VAT and labour taxes for every single pound through the door. Any business to consumer business that has a higher percentage of labour costs is much, much more punitively hit by tax take per pound turned over. And this is particularly true of hairdressing and beauty where labour costs are so high. All we ask is, how can this be fair? How can a tax system that hits one business model much harder than another business model so much be fair? We need a radical reform of taxes to balance the playing field, to make sure that hairdressing salons can provide a future for apprentices, and to make sure that we're respected in the way that we should be. Would love to hear your comments. Please do add anything you want to the end, and I really hope this starts a debate where we can come together and make this change for the industry.